The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Concordant floated silently in the void of space, a massive crystalline structure that shimmered with the light of 1,000 stars. As Ambassador KRX of the Uteran Empire settled into his hover seat, he couldn't help but notice the empty section where the human delegates should have been. Not that anyone had really expected them to show up, not after what happened on New Montana. Order in the chamber. High Chancellor Vex's voice echoed through the vast space. His raised forearms were a familiar gesture of authority among the gathered species. We are here to discuss the incident involving the human response to the Drade operation. Ambassador KRX barely held back a laugh, earning a sharp glare from PTO of the Unified Hives. Incident. They called it an incident when an entire Drachnid battle fleet was reduced to drifting debris. Apparently, that's all it was now, just another minor event in the grand scheme of galactic politics. The humans, Vexa continued, his scaled skin shifting from green to a worried shade of purple, have issued what they're calling a final notice of grievance. Would Ambassador KRX please read the communication for Council? Oh, of course. They always made him do the awkward parts, probably because his species was one of the few that could actually pronounce human words without needing a translator. KRX pulled up the holographic document and cleared his throat sacs. To the Galactic Concordat and all associated species, he began, trying to steady his voice. For 300 standard cycles, humanity has participated in good faith within your governmental framework. We have endured trade restrictions that crippled our outer colonies. We have watched as you carved up our expansion zones. We have suffered your protective scientific oversight that has held back our research and development. The chamber erupted into murmurs. KRX raised his voice. But the unprovoked attack on New Montana crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. You have mistaken our patience for weakness, our diplomacy for fear, our restraint for limitation. He paused, noticing how the council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Consider this humanity's resignation from the Concordat effective immediately. Any species that stands between us and justice for New Montana will be considered hostile. You have 24 standard hours to choose your position. Choose wisely. The room exploded into chaos. Trade Minister Zilda Commerce Worlds fainted, her crystalline form tinkling softly as her attendants caught her. The Hive representatives clicked in agitation, and through it all, High Chancellor Vexator simply sat there, his 4 hands clasped together, his scales now a sickly white. Surely, Ambassador Pitot cut in sharply, the humans must understand their position. They were one species among hundreds. Their military power was only a fraction of the combined fleet. KRX couldn't help himself. He laughed. All eyes turned to him, and he realized he would have to explain what none of them seemed to grasp yet. My esteemed colleagues, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, has it occurred to any of you that the humans waited until now to send this message? That perhaps they've spent these 300 cycles preparing for exactly this moment? The silence that followed was deafening. KRX stood slowly from his hover seat. Perhaps we should review how we arrived at this catastrophic moment. Let's start with the Perius embargo. Vexator nodded wearily. Even he couldn't deny how foolish that decision had been. Officially, the embargo was meant to protect developing species in the Perius arm from aggressive human economic practices. In reality, it was the commerce world protecting their monopoly on quantum crystalline computing. The humans submitted 17 separate proposals to modify the embargo. KRX continued, watching his colleagues squirm, each more reasonable than the last. But no, Trade Minister Zila and her precious commerce worlds needed their profit margins. A harsh sound escaped KRX's throat sacs. Then came the mass starvation on New Montana, New Texas, and 5 other human colonies, cut off from their supply lines. The humans requested emergency aid. We voted no. They asked for temporary exemptions. We voted no. They sought permission to relocate their citizens. We voted no. Ambassador Pitot clicked his mandibles irritably. The law must be upheld. KRX cut him off. Let's talk about the Beta Carina incident then. When a combined fleet declared human expansion zones as protected sanctuaries for space-dwelling lithoids, strange how those same lithoids were cleared out just 5 cycles later to make way for a Drachnid colony. Supreme Commander Ruddle of the Drachnid delegation rose from his seat his bioluminescent patches flaring. Those accusations were never proven. "Oh, sit down, Riddle," KRX snapped. We all saw the footage. Humans had terraformed 3 planets in that sector. They invested 60 cycles of work, built cities, established farms. Then suddenly, your survey ships discovered critically endangered crystal breathers in that exact sector. Please. The chamber erupted again in angry shouts and accusations. KRX let them rage for a moment before triggering the sonic dampeners in his sectioned room. In the artificial quiet, he accessed more records. But the scientific censorship, he continued, once the others had settled, that was our masterpiece of diplomatic idiocy. When humans developed their first functional quantum consciousness transfer system, what did we do? The Science Council, in its infinite wisdom, declared it too dangerous for an immature species and demanded they abandon the research. Vexator's scales shifted to a deep blue, the color of remembered shame. The technology had significant risks, KRX shouted, his throat sacs fully inflated. The technology worked. Better than anything our species had developed. But instead of collaboration, we chose suppression. When Dr. Elena Martinez refused to destroy her research, the Science Council sent in enforcement units. 10 human scientists died in the raid. The newer council members looked shocked. This part usually got glossed over in official histories. The humans went quiet after that, KRX said, his voice softening. Too quiet. They accepted our restrictions, followed our rules, smiled during diplomatic functions. But if any of you had bothered to really look, he gestured toward the holographic displays showing human space. Their shipping manifests never quite matched their production numbers. Their energy consumption was always slightly higher than reported. Their colonies kept growing despite the restrictions. Trade Minister Zila, now recovered from her fainting spell, raised a crystalline appendage. Are you suggesting they've been systematically deceiving us? No, KRX replied, sinking back into his hover seat. I'm stating it as fact. Humans have a saying, he added. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. For 300 cycles, we gave them nothing but the worst, and I guarantee you they've been planning accordingly. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. All those years of vetoes, restrictions, and suppression, everyone thought they were containing a potentially dangerous species. Instead, they'd given humanity time. Time to prepare. Time to build. Time to plan. And now, with the ashes of New Montana still cooling, they had finally pushed the humans past their breaking point. The central display flickered to life, showing the ruins of New Montana. Even now, 3 days after the Drachnid attack, fires still burned across the continent spanning wheat fields. The massive agricultural domes lay shattered, their broken shells scattered like the bones of ancient creatures. Play the footage, KRX demanded, his voice rough with emotion. Most of his colleagues flinched. They already knew what was coming. The recording began. New Montana's orbital defense platforms hung silent in space, powered down as required by Concordat law. Then, the Drachnid fleet dropped out of hyperspace, 47 capital ships strong. No warning, no demands, just immediate, overwhelming force. Stop, Supreme Commander Riddle protested. No, KRX snarled. You will watch. You will all watch. The Drachnid ships opened fire. Energy weapons carved molten scars across the planet's surface. Kinetic bombardment rounds punched through atmospheric shields, striking cities with the force of small nuclear weapons. 7 million humans died in the first hour. But that wasn't what broke them. What broke them was the agricultural domes. Notice, KRX said, highlighting specific ships in the display, how the Drachnid fleet specifically targeted food production facilities, not military installations, not industrial centers. They deliberately destroyed the means to feed a population. No one spoke. No one moved. The truth lingered in the air like smoke. The humans had warned them. They hadn't listened. The recording continued to play, silent footage from New Montana's final hours. Emergency beacons lit up the night side of the planet as desperate civilians tried to flee. The Drachnid fleet methodically picked off escaped ships. Not all of them, just enough to prove they could, just enough to send a message. 17 hours, I said, my throat sacs tightening with barely contained rage. For 17 hours, human ships across 3 sectors received distress calls from New Montana, calls we were legally forbidden from answering due to Concordat's quarantine protocols. High Chancellor Vexator raised all 4 hands in protest. Those protocols exist to prevent conflict escalation. I cut him off sharply. They exist to protect aggressors like the Drades from consequences. But here's what you all seem to have missed. The humans obeyed those protocols. For 17 hours, while their people died, they followed your laws. I switched the display to current sensor readings. Then, exactly 18 hours after the first shot was fired, every human military vessel in known space activated previously unknown drive systems and vanished. The chamber erupted into murmurs, confusion spreading among the delegates. Ambassador Pitot twitched nervously. Vanished? Where? That, I replied, unable to hide a note of dark admiration, is the interesting part. According to our best data, they didn't go anywhere. They simply stopped being detectable. 5,000 ships gone like they'd never existed. Trade Minister Zill's crystalline form vibrated with anxiety. Impossible. Our detection systems are being jammed by technology we didn't know existed. I finished for her. Yes, just like we didn't know about their fleet's true capabilities. Just like we didn't know about their actual industrial capacity. And just like we didn't know about the massive military installation buried 2 kilometers under New Montana's surface. That got their attention. I triggered another holographic display. This one showing deep scan readings taken just before all our sensors mysteriously failed. I pointed to a massive structure beneath the planet's crust. While we were all busy congratulating ourselves on keeping humanity contained, they built a fortress under our noses. One that survived the bombardment. One that, according to our last readings, was launching ships. But that wasn't even the worst part. I saved my biggest revelation for last. 6 hours ago, something happened. Would anyone like to guess what it was? Silence filled the chamber. I let it stretch, watching my colleague squirm. Every human in known space disappeared. Not just military personnel. Every human. Trading posts, diplomatic missions, research stations, civilian contractors. All empty. 3 billion humans across 700 systems gone in an instant. The implications hit like a plasma blast. High Chancellor Vexator's scales turned almost white. That's not possible. The energy requirements alone. Quantum consciousness transfer, I said quietly. Remember that technology we forced them to abandon? Turns out they didn't abandon it. They perfected it. And now, we had no idea where humanity's population had gone, or where their fleet was, or what they were planning. I stood, looking each council member in their various sensory organs. But we do know one thing. In the last transmission from New Montana before the Drachnid fleet opened fire, Governor Chen said something to her people. The humans have been kind enough to let us keep that recording. I played the clip. Governor Chen's voice, calm despite the approaching enemy fleet, filled the chamber. Remember the Alamo? None of our xenohistorians could explain the reference, at least not until comprehension dawned on my colleagues' faces. It's from human military history. I explained. It means they're about to make someone pay dearly for a mistake. Just then, the chamber's emergency alerts began blaring. Reports flooded in from across known space. Human ships appearing out of nowhere, hitting strategic targets with surgical precision. And one message broadcast on all frequencies. Humanity thanks the Galactic Concordat for its patience. Now please sit back and observe how warfare should be conducted. Red warning holograms filled the air as Supreme Commander Ruddle barked orders into his neural link, bioluminescent patches pulsing with panic. Drachnid Fleet Base Omega. 7 is gone, just gone. 300 ships, 50,000 personnel. The humans hit it with some kind of weapon that turned everything within a 50-kilometer radius into elementary particles. I checked my own updates. Yes, they call it the Manhattan Protocol. Apparently, they've had that particular surprise waiting for 3 decades. The Drachnid commander's facial tentacles writhed in distress. But our shields can't stop a weapon that changes the fundamental forces holding matter together. I interrupted, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. Really makes you wonder what else they developed while pretending to follow our technology restrictions, doesn't it? Vexator's scales had shifted to a shade of gray none of us had seen before. The combined fleet is mobilizing. We have numerical superiority. He was cut off by a new alert. The massive display flickered to life again, this time showing the Drachnid home system, or rather, what was left of it. The mighty defense ring of 50,000 automated weapons platforms now floated as debris. The supposedly impregnable planetary shield had been disabled by a computer virus that somehow bypassed every security measure. "Oh, look," I commented dryly. "Humanity remembered your tricks from the Beta Carina incident. How thoughtful of them to return the favor." Ambassador P's mandibles clacked rapidly. The human fleet can't possibly be everywhere at once. I brought up another tactical display. They don't need to be. See these patterns? Classic human military doctrine: vertical envelopment, tactical mobility, force multiplication. They're not trying to hold territory. They're destroying strategic targets and disappearing before we can respond. Then came a real impact. No simulation this time. The chamber shook slightly. External cameras showed the Commerce World's prized defense fleet engaging 3 human warships directly above the council chamber. And the humans were winning. Fascinating, I mused, watching the battle unfold. Their ships are using maneuvers that should tear them apart. Energy readings are off the charts. It's like they're not bound by the same laws of physics we are. Impossible. Trade Minister Zill's crystalline form resonated with fear. Our scientists assured us that humans couldn't possibly advance beyond our technological level. I laughed. Did it ever occur to you that they let us think that? That every advancement they showed us was carefully calculated to keep us complacent? Another explosion lit up space above us. One of the human ships had just copied itself. Then both copies copied themselves. The Commerce World fleet was now facing 12 identical warships instead of 3. Quantum duplication, I explained to my stunned colleagues. Another technology we told them was too dangerous to develop. I'm starting to sense a pattern here. Supreme Commander Riddle suddenly went rigid, his neural link buzzing with priority transmissions. The human fleet, his voice faltered. I checked my own updates. Let me guess, they just appeared in every major system simultaneously? Military bases, shipyards, command centers, all under attack at the exact same moment. The chamber fell silent except for the wail of alarms and the distant sound of battles unfolding in orbit. I stood straighter, adjusting my diplomatic robes. You know what the really interesting part is? I looked around at my terrified colleagues. They're being selective, precise, only military targets, only species that supported the Drades. They're not even blocking civilian traffic. High Chancellor Vexa found his voice. They're showing restraint? No, I corrected him. They're showing us exactly how much restraint they've been practicing for the past 300 cycles. And what happens when that restraint finally runs out? The next 6 hours in the council chamber felt like watching a masterclass in warfare. Trade Minister Zila shattered herself in panic an hour ago when the humans broadcast their next message. Not with weapons or threats, but with music. What is this noise? Supreme Commander Riddle demanded, his tentacles curling in agitation. Flight of the Valkyries. I answered, recognizing the ancient human battle song. They're broadcasting on all frequencies while they dismantle our fleets. Apparently, they have a sense of humor. The tactical displays told a story none of us wanted to read. The proud Drachnid armada scattered like prey animals. The Commerce World defense grid turned against their own ships via human cyber warfare. Hive clusters, mighty spawning fleets, now drifting in space, their crews seemingly asleep. How? Ambassador P's mandibles wouldn't stop twitching. How are they predicting our every move? I pulled up another report, laughing despite myself. Remember all those human servants in our diplomatic corps? The ones we thought were just cheap labor? Turns out they've been cataloging our military response patterns for generations. The chamber rocked again as another battle unfolded nearby. This time, I noticed something odd about the human tactics. They're hurting us, I realized, watching the pattern emerge. Every retreat route leads to a prepared ambush. They mapped out this entire campaign before firing the first shot. Vexator scales had settled into a permanent shade of gray. The combined fleet is reporting strange malfunctions. Ships shutting down, weapons failing. Quantum virus. I explained, reviewing the latest data. They infected our networks years ago, laying dormant, gathering data, waiting for the signal. When New Montana burned, they activated their trap. Another alert flashed. A simple message appeared on every screen in the chamber. Check your calendars. Confusion lasted only moments before understanding hit. Today's date on the human calendar, April 1st, April Fool's Day. They timed their revenge to coincide with their ancient holiday of pranks and tricks. These humans, Rudel muttered, they turned war into theater. No, I corrected him. They turned your slaughter of their people into a lesson. Look at the battle footage. Every human ship broadcast their target's crimes before attacking. They weren't just winning. They were documenting their justice. The displays showed more human ships appearing from nowhere, using tactics that defied conventional physics. Some phased through solid matter. Others manipulated time itself, arriving at their targets before they launched their attacks. That's impossible, whispered one of the junior ambassadors. The energy requirements alone. They solved cold fusion 40 cycles ago. I revealed, enjoying the shock gasps. Kept that quiet, too, along with quantum tunneling, temper mechanics, and about a dozen other technologies we thought were theoretical. A new tactical assessment flashed across my neural link. The Drachnid home fleet, pride of their empire, had just surrendered unconditionally. The Commerce World's defense forces followed minutes later. The dominoes were falling exactly as humanity planned. You know what's truly terrifying? I asked the Stun Council. This isn't even their full force. Long-range scans suggest most of their fleet is still waiting in whatever pocket dimension they've been hiding in. Rudel slumped in his hover seat. How long have they been planning this? Since the first trade restriction, I said quietly. Every insult, every restriction, every diplomatic slight. They remembered them all, built their response one piece at a time, created redundancies we never imagined. The main screen lit up with a new message from a human fleet, this time accompanied by another Earth song, the Imperial March. We're not going to win this, are we? Vexel whispered. I shook my head. Chancellor, we lost this war 300 cycles ago. We just didn't know it until today. 1 month after what humans now call the April Fool's War, I stood in the rebuilt council chamber. The changes were impossible to miss. The Drachnid seat sat empty, now under human oversight. The Commerce World section had been reduced to a single chair, and in the center where the High Chancellor's platform once floated, stood a simple wooden podium. Admiral Mir Rodriguez stepped up to that podium, her dress uniform gleaming under starlight. No weapons. No guards, just quiet confidence. The terms are non-negotiable, she announced, her voice carrying that peculiar human mix of warmth and steel. But they are fair. I watched my fellow ambassadors as she outlined humanity's demands. No more technology restrictions, no more artificial trade barriers, no more interference with human expansion. Simple terms that would have prevented this whole disaster if we'd offered them 3 centuries ago. You're not demanding reparations? Trade Minister Zill asked, her crystalline form still showing stress fractures from her earlier collapse. Rodriguez smiled, not the diplomatic smile we were used to from humans. A real one. Your functioning economies serve our interests better than your bankrupted ones. We're not here for revenge. We're here for change. Supreme Commander Rudel, now the last of the Drachnid High Command, raised his tentacles. And our military forces will be limited to defensive capabilities only. Rodriguez replied without hesitation. You can keep your patrol fleets. But the next species that launches an unprovoked attack will find their entire military infrastructure turned into a quantum physics experiment again. I couldn't help but notice how the Admiral's hand briefly touched a small medal on her chest, the New Montana Service Cross. She'd lost family there. Yet here she stood, offering peace. There is one more thing, she continued, triggering a holographic display. We're establishing a new research initiative, open to all species. No restrictions, no censorship, pure science, pure cooperation. The chamber buzzed with surprised murmurs. Vexator's scales shifted to a cautious green. You would share your advanced technology? Rodriguez shook her head. No, we're offering you the chance to develop it yourselves, with guidance. Think of it as a galactic scholarship program. I understood then what humanity had planned. They weren't creating an empire. They were building a school. The universe is bigger than our petty power games, Rodriguez continued. There are threats out there that will require all of us working together. Real threats. The kind that make our recent unpleasantness look like a children's game. She gestured to the stars visible through the chamber's crystal walls. Humanity didn't develop all this technology just to win a war. We developed it because we looked into the dark between stars and saw things coming. Things that should scare you a lot more than we do. The chamber fell silent. I noticed how every ambassador suddenly found themselves staring into space, wondering what humanity had seen out there that drove them to such lengths. So, Rodriguez concluded, you have a choice. Join us in preparing for the real fight, or stay locked in your comfortable ignorance. But understand this. We won't let anyone hold back progress anymore. The universe doesn't care about our politics or our pride. It only respects preparation. As the Admiral stepped down from the podium, I couldn't help but laugh. My colleagues turned to stare. 300 cycles, I explained, wiping moisture from my throat sacs. We spent 300 cycles trying to contain humanity because we feared what they might become. And in doing so, we forced them to become exactly what we feared, but better than we imagined. Admiral Rodriguez paused on her way out. You know, Ambassador KRX, there's an old human saying, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. And what did we wish for? I asked. She smiled that terrifyingly genuine smile again. You wish for humanity to learn its place in the galaxy. We did. Turns out that place is at the front of class, teaching the rest of you how to survive what's coming. As she left, I looked around at my fellow ambassadors and saw the same realization on all their faces. We had tried to play teachers to humanity, never realizing we were the ones who needed schooling. The stars seemed a little darker that day, but for the first time in centuries, we weren't facing that darkness alone.